As we're doing all this work, it's incredibly busy. It's an incredibly busy time for NASA. It's impressive to watch our team and how they focus on flying these missions safely. I know we can count on them to do their job, and that we'll get to see our crews here on orbit pretty soon doing their part to conduct research and prepare us for the next phase of exploration. And now I want to turn it over to Steve Stitch, our Commercial Crew Program Manager.
Thanks, Ken, and thank you all for being here today, and thank you for your interest in human spaceflight and the Commercial Crew Program. You know, it is kind of hard to believe the launch of Crew-11 is just around the corner. It's about 3 weeks away. We're currently targeting no earlier than July 31st for the launch of Crew-11 off of Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center. So again, 3 weeks from today. That launch time would be about 12:09 p.m. Eastern, so it's a nice daytime launch, just a little after lunchtime. Docking would set us up. It's a longer transit time. This is a 39-hour launch to dock, so we would dock about 3 a.m. Eastern on August the 2nd. We'll watch that time closely. We have a limit of about 40 hours or so of ability to sustain the crew on the way to station when we protect all the consumables for contingencies. So we'll watch that really carefully. There's some station reboost coming up, and if we trip over that limit, we would go to the backup day 1 day later on August 1st. We have a good series of launch opportunities in the July-August timeframe. We'll have backups on August the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd. And then we would have to stand down on August the 4th. That's a long phasing. Then we would get in another sequence of 3 days after that. So we have a good sequence of launch opportunities coming up. Of course, we're working with the station program, watching the Axiom 4 mission, carefully. Obviously, we need to undock that mission. I think the current targeted time is to undock around the 14th of July after the high beta period. It's a busy time frame. This mission, we originally were planning this mission, Crew-11, to fly in the August time frame, mid-August. We've accelerated that. If you just look holistically at the manifest for this year, Commercial Crew Program has accelerated this mission by a couple of weeks to allow a critical reboost flight to occur on CRS-33, and I know Bill will talk more about that. So Commercial Crew is trying to do whatever we can to optimize the station manifest. We're very excited to fly our Dragon Endeavor for the 6th time, and we've been working on that certification as well. So this is the same vehicle that we flew 5 years ago, Bob and Doug, on Demo 2, and it's really interesting to believe that it's now on its 6th flight. I was able to talk to the crew last week. Zena, Mike, Kimiya, and Oleg, they're very excited. They're prepared for this mission. They got in the Dragon spacecraft last week and put it through its paces right before the July 4th holiday. So they're ready to go. Their suits are in good shape. All the interfaces with Dragon are in good shape. Our team has been working very hard this year. It's been a big year for Commercial Crew in terms of getting to 5x reuse on our Falcon 9 boosters, moving all of our landing operations from the East Coast, from Florida to the Pacific, and then also working on extended Dragon reuse is what we call it. And so we've had to go through and do a recertification effort of Dragon, working hand in hand with SpaceX to get to 6 flights. Some components on Dragon will go up to 15 flights, but we're really working hard to get to the 6th flight of Dragon for Endeavor. Tremendous amount of work. We've looked at over 360 different design units is what we call them. And we're working through that right now. We have a little bit more work to complete, but it looks like that work should close out in time for the launch date. And of course, if we need more time, we can adjust the launch date. Sarah will talk more about Dragon Endeavor. It's doing well. All the components are installed on Dragon. Again, the crew did the test drive last week. Next up is wait in CG this week, and then they'll move Dragon from the Hangar X2 over to Dragonland, and we'll mate the trunk and the Dragon spacecraft, and then get into next weekend. And Sarah will talk more about that. This Dragon has a number of upgrades. We continue to try to improve our wrist posture, for crew safety, so we have some new upgrades that we're flying on this flight. One of those is a parachute upgrade. Last flight, we flew a new energy modulator, which is a kind of a damping mechanism that is used for the drogues to pull the mains out. On this particular flight, we'll fly for the first time what we call a drogue upgrade, a drogue 3.1. This will strengthen the crown of that drogue parachute with some additional strength. And then we have changed the way it's packaged a little bit to have a more orderly inflation. It flew for the first time on CRS-32, and then we did a series of rocket sled tests at the Navy China Lake facility in June, 3 different tests to deploy that parachute in a simulated environment-like flight. We'll close that work out and certify it and get ready for flight. We also have a new heat shield as well on this Dragon. We've improved the capability of the structure. It's a composite heat shield, and so we have that that we're flying for the first time on Crew-11. The booster's in good shape. It's in the hangar going through its final processing. It's a 3rd flight booster, just flew recently on Axiom 4. That booster maintenance is underway, expected to wrap up in a week or 2. Second stage is there. It's been through static fire at McGregor, so it's in good shape as well for that flight. And again, if we need to take a little bit more time, we have the time, and we can adjust the launch date if needed. As I mentioned, we'll launch off pad 39A. That pad is clear for Crew-11. That's the next launch off that pad is Crew-11. It's in good shape. We're not really working any major issues for the pad. And then, of course, once we get docked to station, we'll set up and work the Crew-10 return. Right now, if Crew-11 launches and docks safely by 8/2, the earliest Crew-10 date for return would be around August the 5th, and we'll work that with Bill and his team. We're also super excited to, for the first time for commercial crew, return our crew to the West Coast. Axiom will do that ahead of us. SpaceX has flown from too and landed in the Pacific as well, and then CRS-32 also landed there. But for the first time for commercial crew, and our team has worked very hard and completed all the certification to land on the West Coast. So we're going to take it step by step along the way to Crew-10 launch. We have our FRR starting next week, and we'll remain vigilant. I do want to thank the entire team, the whole NASA team working CCP across the country, the ISS program, SpaceX, the FAA, the Coast Guard, and Space Force. We have a lot of partnerships that participate in our missions, and everybody is pulling together and looking forward to a good launch. And I'll turn it over to Bill.
All right, thanks, Steve, and I'll echo my thanks for all of you being here and your continued interest in our mission. Of course, this will be the 11th crew rotation with SpaceX to the station as part of the commercial crew program, so we're really excited to have this occur. Steve laid out the times and the interesting dates for docking and everything, and then we'll have a short handover period between once Crew-11 arrives and before Crew-10 departs. That'll be dependent on just timing of the docking itself. As we talked about, there's a little bit of a long phasing there, as well as other things that'll be going on board station to get the appropriate handover between the crews. And then, of course, we'll be watching the weather for that return. We're really looking forward to welcoming the Crew-11 crew, Zena, Mike, Kimiya, and Oleg onto space station. Of course, this is the first flight for Zena and Oleg. As Ken mentioned, this is Mike's this will be Mike's 4th trip to space, and then Kimiya's 2nd. So it's the first time on Dragon for all of them. Mike has done a flight on a shuttle as well as twice on the Soyuz. So now he gets to add Dragon to his collection of flights. And then Kimiya also flew on a Soyuz before. As you know, this year, and Ken mentioned, we'll be marking that huge milestone of 25 years of continuous human presence on the space station. And this will be the crew that will be on board to mark that milestone for us coming up. As you look at the past 25 years on station, we've really done an amazing amount of work advancing scientific knowledge, demonstrating new technologies, and really doing all of the things that help prepare us for human exploration of the moon and Mars. A lot of the technologies that we've proven out on space station over these 25 years are being used in those next step programs. Through the commercial approach that we've had and the partnership that we've had with SpaceX, these crew rotation missions, we continue to maximize our research and throughput on the vehicle, and really working towards that. And then, of course, the station is critical to prepare for future commercial endeavors in low Earth orbit. We have kind of paved the way in terms of the challenges that we've had to overcome. We've learned a lot of lessons for folks so that we don't have to repeat those and really help the industry stand up a commercial LEO economy. And that really allows us to do the next steps as well, going into Moon and Mars. I'll highlight a couple of the interesting science experiments that we have going on station for Crew-11. This is not an inclusive list by any means, but a couple of really interesting ones to me at least. We have a metal 3D printer, which is an investigation by our ESA colleagues that will run some more runs on board while Crew-11 is there, looking at additive manufacturing or 3D printing of small metal parts in microgravity. Results can improve understanding of the function and performance and operations of metal 3D printing in space, as well as enhance quality, strength, and characteristics of those printed parts. Another interesting one is an experiment called Rhodium Sailing to the Stars. Sailing to the Stars tests the deployment of a light sail inside the International Space Station. Light sails are a technology that uses light photons emitted from the sun to move spacecraft. Results from this investigation could inform improvements in the design of those deployment systems. So they're going to look at how these systems can deploy in microgravity. It gives them a really great chance to go look at that onboard ISS. And then finally, of course, we continue to look at our complement of integrated protocols for human exploration research, or CIPHER, which is looking at varying mission durations for people on board. These studies how astronauts adapt to space over different mission durations, integrating multidisciplinary research to assess physiological and psychological changes that develop, and really to develop those countermeasures that are critical for us to go do the longer duration missions, like a 3-year mission to Mars, if you can imagine. So station has been busy, as we've mentioned a couple times over, right? We have the Axiom 4 private astronaut mission on board today. They've been doing a lot of great work on board, a lot of really exciting public outreach for that crew, as well as science experiments that they've been doing. Today is 14 days on the station, and we're looking forward to welcoming them home soon. As Steve mentioned, we're looking early next week, probably for the first undock opportunity, and we'll look forward to weather and the other factors that play into that decision. Over the weekend, we had over the holiday weekend, we had a progress exchange with our Roscosmos colleagues. 92P launched and then docked on July 5th, carrying about 3 tons of supplies. Then we have, of course, Sirius 33, SpaceX 33 coming up, which is a really exciting mission for us. It's providing a new capability for providing reboost of the station, and providing multiple methods for us to maintain the station altitude is critically important as we continue to operate and get the most use out of our resources and our limited launch resources that we do have. So we're really looking forward to demonstrating that capability with SpaceX 33 showing up after we get through the Crew-11 and Crew-10 handover. We have a number of other missions coming up this fall. We have another progress exchange in September. We also have our next Northrop Grumman mission, NG-23, will show up this fall with a new extended Cygnus capsule, so providing more capability to us in terms of cargo. As well as, and our JAXA colleagues will mention more about it, the first flight of the new HTV-X transportation vehicle, which is a completely new vehicle in our arsenal to resupply the station that has been under development from our Japanese colleagues. And then finally, we'll get to welcome aboard Chris Williams as part of the Soyuz MS-28 crew in November. So a lot of really busy vehicles, traffic coming and going to the space station. We're going to continue that pace as we go. And then we'll continue to work this great international collaboration. It's fitting we get to talk about our international collaboration here as we come up on Tuesday next week. Is actually the 50th anniversary of the launch for the Apollo-Soyuz mission. And so really looking back over our collaboration internationally over time and looking from where we started to where we are today, it's really awesome to see where we are. With that, thanks again to everybody who supports the mission here. We really appreciate all the efforts. There's a lot of work that goes into it. As you can see, we're very busy in terms of everything coming up. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Thanks, Bill. Well, I say this almost every time, but human spaceflight is core to SpaceX's ultimate mission to make human life multiplanetary. So flying crew safely is always our top priority as a company. And one of the reasons these press conferences for these NASA crew missions are the most fun for me personally. This will be our 11th long-duration crew mission to the ISS through the Commercial Crew Program. It's our 16th human spaceflight mission to the space station in all, and our 49th trip to ISS if you count both crew and cargo missions. So we'll get to round out 2025 with an even 50th visit next month with that cargo mission, CRS-33, that Bill was talking about. We're excited to fly Zena, Mike, Kimiya, and Oleg along with their critical research projects that they're bringing up. And this will be our 5th Dragon mission and 4th human spaceflight mission of 2025. And we're also proud to be a part of Zena and Oleg's first spaceflight as well. Every human spaceflight mission is unique, and this one is certainly no exception. This Dragon spacecraft has successfully flown 18 crew members representing 8 countries to space already, starting with Bob and Doug in 2020, when it returned human spaceflight capabilities to the United States for the first time since the shuttle retired in July of 2011, which happened to be the week I began at SpaceX. I still remember watching that last shuttle launch, STS-135. I was sitting in a conference room with a very small Dragon team at the time, and it was my first few days here. And I remember looking at the faces around me and thinking, today we begin. The world is counting on us to write the next chapter of human spaceflight, and it's time to get to work, right? So less than a year later, we sent our first Dragon to the spacecraft, or our first Dragon spacecraft to the ISS with a shipment of cargo. And here we are, more than 50 Dragon missions later, with the very first Dragon to carry humans into orbit, now flying its 6th flight, which is more flights than any single Dragon spacecraft has flown before. We're excited for this Dragon, named Endeavour by its first crew, to carry 4 more astronauts to space in a few weeks. This will be the 3rd flight for the Falcon 9 booster, which previously launched a Starlink mission and the AX-4 mission just a week or 2 ago. Peggy and her crew are actually still up on ISS today. It's been fun to follow along on their daily science updates on the Axiom website. And we're starting to look at the weather over here at SpaceX to find the right day to bring them home, likely sometime next week. For Crew-11, the ground teams are currently completing both the spacecraft and the launch vehicle's final integration campaign. And we plan to transport Dragon tomorrow night to our fueling facility to be loaded with propellant before it heads to the hangar next to be mated with the launch vehicle. So Steve already mentioned that we're currently targeting July 31st at 16:09 UTC, that's around noon Eastern time, as the first possible launch opportunity. But you've been walking with us long enough to know that, as always, NASA and SpaceX work closely to ensure that all teams and hardware are ready to fly. So we still have multiple reviews and tests ahead of us prior to launch, and each one of those gives us an opportunity to step back, to talk to each other, to review the data, listen to the hardware, and mitigate any risks for a safe flight. So I want to extend a huge thank you to everyone involved, NASA, JAXA, Roscosmos, and the 45th for your partnership as we prepare once again for a mission together. And go Crew-11.
And next, we'd like to welcome Mayumi Matsura, Vice President and Director General of Human Spaceflight Technology Directorate with JAXA.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mayumi Matsura, Vice President for Human Spaceflight and Exploration in JAXA. Thank you for having me today. And first, on behalf of JAXA, I'd like to sincerely thank NASA's leadership, space expert, and all members who are working so hard on Crew-11 mission preparation and continue in ISS operations. I'm going to tell you about a Crew-11 mission from JAXA's standpoint. JAXA astronaut Kimiya Yui is part of Crew-11 members. This is his second mission since 2015. The first highlight we will see during the mission is the reunion of the two JAXA astronauts on the ISS. Takuya Onishi, one of Crew-10 members, and now he is the ISS commander, is waiting for Kimiya and Crew-11 of arrival. And this nice happening is not the first time for Japan. However, it's still a rare case and a great honor. I believe that this is a result of Japan's continued contribution to human activity on ISS, which marks its 50th anniversary this year. Unfortunately, this fun period won't last long, but those gentlemen are both talented, so they must entertain us with something somehow. And their presence will surely give courage to children all over Japan who dream of space. And the second highlight will be HTV-X1, as Bill mentioned. HTV is a new cargo transfer vehicle JAXA developed, which is the successor to the previous Conatory vehicle. We had 9 Conatory mission through 2009 to 2020, and all the missions were successful. We will launch the first HTV-X from Tanegashima, Japan. Once the vehicle reaches the point very close to the ISS, it will stop there to be captured by Canadarm2. This is one of the important moments to the mission. The robotic arm is operated by an onboard crew, and we are hoping the crew will be Kimiya. If it happens, that will be the second captured operation for Kimiya. The previous one was Conatory number 5. Of course, it was successful, so I believe we will see that great moment again. And we are proud to be able to supply important cargo to the ISS with this HTV-X again. There are many other important tasks ahead that Kimiya will be involved in. For instance, the science experiment to clarify the effect of the space environment on plant cell division, or technology demonstration to confirm the device for CO2 removal, which is developed to support future space exploration abroad. Also, we are going to conduct a robotic programming competition by using a drone robot in Kibo. Many young students are going to join in this event from the ground, not only in Japan, but also other countries of Asian Pacific region. Finally, we look forward to working with Kimiya as well as other crew members and all IPs to accomplish those tasks and thereby continue to contribute to the success of ISS program and future space exploration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of our leaders joining us from NASA, SpaceX, and JAXA here today. We're going to go ahead and open up the floor to the question and answer session. Thank you very much for joining us here, those that are on site. We'll begin with those in the room as our team gets set up. If you do have a question here in the room, please kindly raise your hand, and our team will make our way over to you. And also for those that are joining us online or through the phone bridge, you can use *1 to be added to the queue. If your question has been answered, you can use *2 to redact that. So we'll go ahead and start with our first question here in the room.
Hi there, Miles Dorn with CBS News. For Bill or Ken, maybe, can you give us a status update on the leak in the PRK after the most recent repair work, and kind of explain what the issue was leading up to the Axiom 4 launch and why that was put on hold for a couple of weeks? What is the current leak rate, and is there agreement with Roscosmos on the cause and the risk going forward? Thanks.
A lot going on in that question to unpack, so I'll try to catch it all. So we prior to the AX4 launch, we did have some operations going on from our Roscosmos colleagues in Paracas, and that resulted in I'll tell you a leak signature difference that we saw. And so as data changes on orbit, we want to assess and go look at that. What it looked like it had done is it had stabilized the leak rate such that we didn't have a great leak rate coming out of the Paracas at that point in time. But we wanted to look at it because we actuate hatches in between the ISS and the Paracas. We wanted to make sure that we understood were there any other factors that could have played into that, which is why we had the discussions that we did and the delays we did. Roscosmos did some troubleshooting on the hatch. And then we had to go look at a couple different pressure levels in the Paracas to confirm the leak across that hatch had been resolved, which it has. And then since then, the Paracas has been holding. Actually, its pressure has been very steady. It's a very small leak rate. It's hard to tell you an exact number because we're at low pressure and it's pretty steady. Pretty small. Sorry. In terms of causes, we continue to work very closely with Roscosmos experts across industry, both on their side and our side, to continue to understand what's going on. I think the teams continue to make great progress in working towards that. We continue to work with them on a weekly basis to talk through new data results, testing that is ongoing, and continue to share results.
Thank you very much for our question. Back to the room.
Hi, Will Robinson Smith with Spaceflight Now. A question for Steve or for Sarah, perhaps, and then a quick one for Bill. With the certification of Dragon coming up to 6, does that also extend out to the full desire by NASA to have up to 15 flights with Dragon, or is this sort of a mission by mission extension? And then as far as the spacecraft that are coming up to the station in the fall, and it was Dream Chaser was not mentioned among that list. Has that been slotted for a time to dock to the station in early 26, or what's the latest on that? Thank you.
I can start with certification. So when we embarked upon this extended Dragon certification, SpaceX ran testing for many components out to 15 flights, and so many components are out there at 15 flights. There's a few right now that we have only cleared up to the 6th flight, so we track it sort of component by component. In particular, some of the structural components, we're working on the weldment structure, and then some of the orbital tubes. There's tubes that go through Dragon to take helium from the propellant tanks from the helium tank to the prop tanks, and then also propellant tanks. And so some of those are looking like there's 6 or 7 flights. So, our focus here is to really get to this particular launch to make sure that we have everything cleared for 6 flights. And then down the road, we may have a little bit more work to do depending on the specific vehicle and how many flights it is. The overall goal was 15 flights, and we've gotten there on many components. Now we're just down to a handful that really are there for only 6 flights. And I'll see if Sarah has anything to add.
Yeah, good words. I think the metrics are going to shake out that we will be at about 70% of the components that together with your team, Steve, we will have fully certified to 15 flights, and then the other 30% or so, somewhere between 6 and 15, depending on how those reviews went. Our goal was to be 100% qualified, meaning we completed all the tests and analyses on our side to demonstrate 15x life with maybe a few exceptions, but largely the entire vehicle. And so we've been finishing the last 1 or 2 of those tests. The teams have worked great together the last 6 months to work through all of that test data and check off component by component its qualified flight limit. So the primary goal of the day was to fly this 6th flight vehicle, knowing that the ultimate goal is 15x, and then we wanted to perform our tests in a way that we were there with the hardware perspective and working towards the reviews with the NASA teams.
Let's see here on the Dream Chaser question. Of course, we all know that space flight is hard, and so when you're coming up to the first flight of a new vehicle, it takes some time. I don't have an update for you on when our planned launch date is for Dream Chaser. We're continuing to work very close with Sierra Space on the development of that vehicle, and we can get an update out at a later time.
Thank you very much for your question. We'll do one more here in the room before going to the Flint Bridge.
Oh, thank you, Mark Carreau with Aviation Week and Space Technology. My question is, in the aftermath of the signing of the reconciliation bill several days ago, is that easing some of the operational and cost concerns for the rest of the year, at least for space station operations? Is that in play yet, or coming into play, or at least it hasn't interrupted the planning?
I may let Ken answer that one for me, but if he's out there.
I believe that'll be for Mr. Ken Bowerstocks, if he's still with us.
Well, so we have yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, we have the information in the Reconciliation Act. We're still evaluating how that's going to affect operations going forward, but it's a positive step. You know, the way our appropriations process works, the president makes a proposal, we get information back from Congress in the form of supplemental appropriations, markups, and then the final appropriation. But then that final appropriation bill goes over to the president, and the president signed it, and that becomes the guidance from both the president and the Congress. And we're still working through all of that to figure out how it will completely affect our programs. But it's a positive step.
Thank you very much for that question. We'll turn now to our phone bridge, and we will start things off with Marcia Dunn from AP.
Yes, hello. Probably for Steve, if I might. Is the Crew-11, are you targeting a 6-month mission, or are you going to start following Russians' lead and bumping to 8-month missions to spread things out more? And if you could please provide a Starliner update, any progress on that front, any idea of the exact cause of all the problems, and your what your plans are for moving forward on that. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, we'll start with the first question, the mission duration. So we have embarked upon an additional on-orbit certification to extend our mission durations from 6 months. Actually, it's 210 days is what's the requirement, from 6 to 8 months. And so we have started that work with SpaceX. Right now, we're focused on getting the 15X certification, to get to a 6th flight work done. SpaceX is in the process of delivering the rest of the data for extending the mission out to 8 months. It'll probably take us a month or so to go through that data after we launch. So you can think of it this way, Marshall. When we launch, we have a 6-month mission duration that we baseline. Of course, we've already flown one mission very close to up to 7 months. And then, we can extend the mission in real time as needed, as we better understand, as Ken talked about, the reconciliation bill and the appropriations process and what that means relative to the overall station manifest. So in terms of Starliner, I would say a lot of testing is going on and a lot of modeling updates all across the country. We had a series of helium leaks that we dealt with during the CFT, the crewed flight test. We have various materials in test right now to improve that seal on the helium interface at the flange of the thruster. We know that we get some permeation of oxidizer vapor across, and the seal that we had was not very robust for oxidizer exposure. So there's testing ongoing across the country to expose the new material that's proposed to various levels of oxidizer and understand how much permeation we can get. So that testing's ongoing, likely leading to a new seal that will replace the seals in the thruster flanges. And then on the thrusters that the software deselected because of low thrust. We have a series of tests ongoing as we speak at the White Sands test facility in New Mexico. We have a thruster that we're taking and putting through various numbers of pulse trains. In other words, small pulses and a certain frequency of those pulses, larger pulses at a different frequency, to understand how the thruster responds to those various pulses. And we're learning a lot about the differences in the oxidizer valve temperatures. The thruster has ox that comes in on one side and fuel that comes in on the other. We're learning a lot about the differences in those temperatures as a function of pulse trains. What that will lead to is taking that results of that, informing thermal models, and also doing an integrated, what we call an integrated doghouse test. That doghouse has been delivered to White Sands. It's in the test stand. That testing and the test stand is being built up to do that testing. That'll involve a series of RCS thrusters being fired at the same time as our OMAC orbital maneuvering thrusters to understand the heat going into that doghouse. That testing is scheduled to start next month, toward the end of next month. And so we're making a lot of progress and understanding kind of the thermal performance. These will be informed thermal modeling. And then Boeing has also implemented a series of hardware modifications. For example, on that single engine thruster that's being tested at White Sands, there's what's called a thermal shunt, or think of it as a way to draw heat away from the thruster. So that's showing a lot of progress compared to the original design of the thruster. And then there's some thermal barriers that will keep the heat from the OMACs from getting back up into the doghouse, and some other thermal modifications inside that doghouse. That doghouse is instrumented with temperature sensors throughout the doghouse, and so when we get into that testing, we can better inform our models. We really are working toward a flight as soon as early next year for Starliner, and then ultimately our goal is to get into crew rotation flights with Starliner, and those would start no earlier than the second rotation slot at the end of next year.
Thank you very much for your question. We'll go back to the phone bridge. Chris Davenport with The Washington Post.
Yeah, hi, thanks very much. I guess for Steve Stitch and SOX, it's a bit of I think it's fair to say, tumultuous time at NASA. You have your second interim administrator this year. The DRPs mean hundreds of people, maybe leaving the agency or wondering what to do and what the future holds for them. And I just wonder, given all that, how do you stay focused on the mission? And what do you tell your teams about fending off distractions and remaining just sort of focused on safety and flying safely and thinking about the crew? Thanks.
Yeah, I can start, and then we'll let Ken add. I mean, we are laser focused in Commercial Crew on getting the work accomplished for the flight. And we try to put the distractions aside. Our team is very experienced and has been through this in various ways throughout the 10 years I've been a part of Commercial Crew, the 5 years I've been the program manager. So we just really, it's kind of like preparing for a sports event. If you're a football player or a baseball player, you kind of have to block out what's out there beyond your control and then focus on what you can control and what our team can control. And our team is incredibly professional, incredibly dedicated. What they can control is getting through the certification work that they have in front of them. And we watch that. We track them every week to week. We also talk to our team about what's going on and the criticality of their work. I think, they know their work really affects the safety of the crew and the success of these missions. I think that's what's important to them. That's what keeps them coming to work every day, and that's what drives them is the work they have and the fulfillment of flying the mission safely. And so I think that's what we do every day with our team. And I'll see if Ken has anything to add.
Yeah, I'll just echo what Steve said. our teams deal with all the excitement of launches, orbital operations, the incredibly difficult process of doing rendezvous and docking, and then bringing crews home, trying to assess what the weather's going to be like, and then bringing them down in this huge fireball for the parachutes to open. There's tremendous stress just in the basic mission. And so they learn to compartmentalize and focus on their task so that they can make sure that they do what's required so the mission is successful. And our team is really good at that. And it is impressive to watch. I know for me, getting to a mission is kind of a pleasant distraction from all the excitement in DC. And I think it's that way for a lot of the rest of our team members.
Thank you very much for your question, and we'll do one more from the phone bridge, and then as we're starting to make our way on the back end of our time here, and be sure to keep your questions limited to just one and keep them brief. That way we can manage and get as many as we can before our time runs out. Then we'll open it up back here in the room. Any additional questions or follow-ups, please be sure to raise your hand, and our team will be sure to bring a microphone over to you. But back to the phone bridge for Stephen Clark with Ars Technica.
Hi, Stephen Clark, Ars Technica. Thanks for doing this. I have a couple of questions. First, for Bill Spetch, to clarify something you said earlier about the leak. Are there any evidence? Is there any evidence of any leaks elsewhere in the stack other than the PRK? And just to clarify, inside that PRK, that you said the leak rate is very small, maybe almost immeasurable, if I understood you correctly. Is there some optimism that the repair the cosmonauts performed last month may have fixed this problem, at least for now? And my other questions for Steve Stitch or Fox. Looking ahead, you have a lot of flights on contract with SpaceX and Boeing, commercial crew rotation flights, but only really 4.5 years, 5 years of life left in the ISS. So seems like you have more flights on contract than you'll be able to fly over the next 5 years, especially if you're stretching out increments out to 8 months. So, any discussion right now with Boeing or internally to talk about, maybe we don't need to give Boeing the authority to proceed the ATP for flights 4 through 6, since you may be covered with all your needs for the first 3 Starliners and everything you have at SpaceX. Thanks.
All right, yeah, I can start with the first one. It's pretty easy. The rest of the station is leak tight. We get to look at that. We continuously monitor that, and everything else shows that we are really tight on our leak rate on the rest of ISS. No evidence of any other cracks any other or any other places.
Yeah, and I'll start relative to looking at the flights. We have 14 flights on contract with SpaceX and 6 on the contract with Boeing, and 3 of those have been ATP'd, and we're sort of in the process as we better understand the budget and better understand what's in front of us. We're working through that. It's really too early to speculate how many flights we'll fly with each provider, SpaceX and Boeing, but we are looking at that, looking at the station life, and then we're also looking ahead toward commercial LEO and toward the commercial LEO destinations, and preserving transportation capability, both cargo and crew, for those destinations. So one of the things we've talked about is if we have capability at the end of station program, could we use those vehicles for comm LEO? And so those are the kind of discussions we're having. Right now we're taking it one step at a time, and the first step in front of us is Crew-11. So, and I'll see if Ken has anything to add.
No, nothing to add there, Steve. You got it.
Thank you very much for that, and we'll bring it back here in the room for one more question.
Marcus Harvey with Astropreneurs. This is either for Steve or Sarah. Could you explain a little more about the heat shield upgrades and why they were needed, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I can talk about that and see if Sarah has anything to add. So, what we found with the heat shield is it's a very big composite piece, and it was very hard to manufacture, I would say. And it was as the components inside this heat shield, there's what's called a laminate. Think of that as the skin, if you will, of this big composite heat shield, and then inside there's various splices that get bonded in and add additional strength to the heat shield. It was a real struggle to manufacture and to get the strength right in various areas. So SpaceX, to their credit, went off and looked at could they build and design an easier to manufacture heat shield, and that's what they have done. It turns out because the other heat shield was a little harder to manufacture, sometimes we had to take back off on the capability of the wind speed that we could land at. Now this newer heat shield has been built and it's been tested. In fact, what SpaceX does is they take the heat shield and put it through a test apparatus. They push on it, they pull on it, they subject it to all the kind of forces you'd see in flight. So it's fully qualified, and now we'll fly it for the first time on Crew-11. So it's an upgrade that I would say both gives us a little better capability for landing wind speed, and then also a little bit more structural capability, easier to build. And see if Sarah has anything to add.
Nope, you got it exactly right, Steve. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that question. We'll do one more here in the room, and then we'll finish up the remainder of our time on the phone bridge.
Thanks, Will Robinson Smith of Spaceflight Now again. Just to follow up on Marcia's Starliner question in your response, Steve. The flight early next year, has it been determined if that will have crew on board or strictly cargo, or what the status of that is? Thanks.
Yeah, we're still looking at that, whether it to be a cargo flight or not. I think there's a lot of advantages, I would say, to flying a cargo flight first. If we really look at the history of Starliner and both Dragon, I think Dragon benefited a lot from having earlier flights before the crew contract was let for a space station for cargo. What we're really looking at is, can we test all the changes that we are making to the doghouses in particular on the ground, and would we want to validate those in flight first? And so there's a strong chance we'll fly a cargo flight first, and then we still haven't made that decision yet, but that's still in front of us.
Thank you very much for that, and we'll go back to our phone bridge. Again, we only have a couple more minutes left in our time today, so be sure to keep your questions brief. We'll start with Jonathan Siri with Fox News.
The Dragon endeavor for this mission, does that change the estimates for loss of mission, loss of crew, and what are those current estimates?
I didn't hear the first part of the question. I think the question was, does the additional certification change the loss of crew numbers? Was that the question?
Does the upgrades to the drogue and also the heat shield to this Dragon, does that change the estimates for loss of mission, loss of crew?
We haven't really totally looked at that number. I think the number is in the same range that we've had, and we can get that number for you. I don't remember it off the top of my head this morning, but certainly they are safety upgrades, improving crew safety, both of those, the heat shield and the drogue. I don't have off the top of my head what the improvement in.
Yeah, if I may, Steve, you guys have given us requirements for loss of mission, loss of crew, and Dragon has always been designed to meet those requirements. And similarly, we've been operating within the requirement space that NASA gave us for all of these systems on all the previous flights. The couple of upgrades we've been making more recently are purely improvements above and beyond that. So we don't go back and reopen those analyses of certifying the vehicle. It's more about moving in the right direction. And as you mentioned with the heat shield, a lot of those improvements aren't really about the flight itself, but about the manufacturability of the material or the ease of maintenance from one flight to the next.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Sarah, for that. And we'll finish up with one more question and one more answer. We'll go to Kenneth Chang with the New York Times.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on Chris Davenport's question. How many people from the NASA teams on ISS and commercial crew are leaving? I wanted to make sure, are any of you leaving? And how do you manage that transition where a lot of people with the knowledge are no longer going to be there? And how do you backfill? Thank you.
Yeah, I would say we don't have a total number of people that have departed or will depart. Remember, all these projections are really after Crew-11. So for Crew-11, that mission's not affected at all by the departures. And in some cases, what I think we'll see is people that have been here for a long time and were planning to retire anyway may retire a little earlier. And so I would say personally, I'm not planning on taking the DRPs. Although I'm sure some people encourage me to take it. So.
And I want to offer to Mr. Bowersox if he had anything to add in terms of from SOMD.
I was just going to say I'm not planning to take any of the early retirement options either, although I'm getting close to that age, so nobody should be surprised when it happens. I also wanted to say that we have some tools as we're trying to manage the critical skills in the workforce. There are ways we can incentivize people to stay. We can ask people to delay their departure so that they can transfer their knowledge to other people. But I don't want to underexpress the fact that we are losing people and that we have folks that have been part of our team for a long time that are going. This is going to require us to take a different look at how we do our business, to focus our operation. That's kind of the good part of it, is as this will cause us to work and be more efficient. But we're going to miss those people. They were part of our team, and we'll miss them as they go. But I have confidence that our team will work through this, and we'll stay strong.
Thank you very much. And that is all the time that we do have for today's mission news briefing as we get ready for the next crew rotational mission to the International Space Station and Crew-11 coming up very soon. Special thanks to Ken Bowersox and Steve Stitch and Bill Spetch joining us of NASA, Sarah Walker of SpaceX, and Mayumi Matsura of JAXA joining us along. Be sure to stick around and stay with us at 1 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Eastern Time, a chance to speak with the crew themselves, Commander Zena Cardman, Pilot Michael Fincke, Kimiya Yui of JAXA, Mission Specialist, and Oleg Platonov of Roscosmos, and also a mission specialist, will be here to join in for the crew's news conference. If you're following along at home, you can ask the crew some questions by submitting on your favorite social media channels at #AskNASA. But that'll do it for now. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon and welcome to NASA's Johnson Space Center. I'm Sandra Jones. We're here today to discuss an upcoming spacewalk outside the International Space Station that will take place on May 1st. This will be the 275th spacewalk in support of space station maintenance, assemblies, and upgrades. Today, to discuss the spacewalk in more detail, we have Bill Spetch, who is the Operations Integration Manager for the International Space Station, and Deanna Trujillo, who will be the spacewalk flight director during the May 1st spacewalk. We'll start with some brief opening remarks from each of our briefers before jumping into questions here in the room, on the phone bridge, and using the hashtag #AskNASA. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Bill for his opening remarks.
All right. Thank you, Sandra, and thank you everyone for being here today to discuss this spacewalk coming up outside the International Space Station, where we're going to install a modification kit ahead of a future IROSA solar array installation, as well as relocate a communications antenna to help support our visiting vehicles. This will be the first spacewalk of Expedition 73, but it'll be our third this year in 2025. We'll have NASA astronauts Anne McClain and Nicole Ayers will be the spacewalkers going out on May 1st, and that's scheduled to start at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. This will be the third spacewalk for Anne and the first for Nicole. U.S. Spacewalk 93 will be the 275th spacewalk, as Sandra mentioned, in support of the International Space Station assembly, maintenance, and upgrades. course, this comes in the middle of a very busy time for ISS. Just on Saturday night, Houston time, Sunday over in Kazakhstan, we welcomed Don Pettit and the rest of the 72 Soyuz crew home. Don actually returned on his 70th birthday and wrapped up to 220 days in space. Then shortly after that, we had the SpaceX 32 cargo mission launch and dock to space station. With that arrival, that delivered nearly 7,000 pounds of science, food, and supplies to the ISS. Looking a bit further ahead, that sets us up really well for, in May, we will see the 4th private astronaut mission to space station. Of course, this year we continue to count forward to the huge milestone of 25 years of continuous human presence in November, and we continue to stay busy on board ISS and continue to press forward with all the great work we're doing. With that, I will turn it over to Deanna to talk to you through the spacewalk in more detail.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Sandra. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zena Trujillo. My call sign is Somos Flight. I am the lead flight director for the U.S. Spacewalk 93, and today I'm excited to share with you all the details for the spacewalk. Like Bill mentioned, on May 1st, our plan is to have astronaut Anne McClain as EV1 with the red stripes, and then Nicole Ayers as EV2. They will be exiting the space station for a planned EVA or spacewalk of about 6 hours and 30 minutes. Leading to the spacewalk, Anne McClain and also Nicole will be assisted by 2 other astronauts, Takuya Onishi and Johnny Kim, who will be helping them get into their spacesuit as well as getting out of their spacesuit as soon as they come back inside. In addition to that, on Earth, we will have a team of specialists that will be following everything on the spacewalk itself, all the details of what we are executing on space. We will start with Spacewalk Lead Officer Farouk Sabor. We also have Marcos Verio as our communicator with the spacewalk, particularly with Anne and with Nicole. We also have Sandy Moore as the communicator with Takuya and Johnny as the EVA is executing outside the station. All the activities, all the details of the activity, as well as monitoring the spacesuit itself, will be done by Lucas Whitner, Bailey Vegas, and Steven Villano. With respect to the spacewalk itself, we have 2 primary objectives this time. One of them is to build and install the modification mod kit, is also how we call it. The structure itself was designed to hold the rollout solar arrays that will come into another EVA in the future. Move or relocate the common communication for visiting vehicle boom or C2B2. The intent here is that we are shifting it 1.5 feet so that we can clear one of the antennas from structural blockage. In addition to that, it would go back to the mod kit, and if we can show one of the slides with the mod kit, please. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so the mod kit itself really is made of a triangle, which we call the upper triangle, 2 structural struts on the side with 27 bolts that we are going to install. We're installing it on the mass canister of the BGA, which is the beta, the BGA is the beta gimbal assembly. And then if we go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about what the secondary activity is. So as we said, it's the C2B tube. This is the boom that we will remove from the currently installed location, then go ahead and put an extension in that same location, and then go back and put the C2B tube boom at the end of the extension. Next slide, please. If we take a step back, I want to also just to share with you that we have installed the mod kits in the station about 6 different times already in different locations. This will be the 7th time that we are going to install it. And this go around, we're going to do it on the 2 alpha location that you can see on the screen. That location is on the port side of the vehicle. The C2V2 is also on the port side of the vehicle, so both activities will be on the same location of the vehicle itself. Next slide, please. Okay. So let's see. So the next thing I wanted just to also share with you guys is the next video that we're going to see, which will show you all the details of the sequence of events of our EVA. So if we can play it, that would be great. Our day will start with astronaut Anne McClain as EV1 in the red stripes and Nicole Ayers as EV2. Nicole will carry an 8-foot long strut bag, and Anne will carry the tool bag. Both crew members will translate to the port side of the International Space Station, heading to the work site of the Modification Kit Structure, or MOD Kit. At that location, they will secure their 2 bags and begin the installation activity. Nicole will start the modification activity by removing the strut out of the bag to assemble the upper triangle. The upper triangle consists of 2 struts and a mounting bracket. Nicole will then hand the triangle to Anne, who will install it on the mast canister of the Beta Gimbal Assembly, or BGA structure. The crew will then proceed with the installation of the right lower strut and the right mid strut on the right side of the mast canister. After that, the crew will move to the left side of the mast canister to perform the same order of operations, beginning with the left lower strut, followed by the left mid strut. Once all the struts are installed, the crew will cover both mid-struts with multi-layer insulation, or MLI, and route the cables of the roll-out solar array in support of future spacewalks. This step concludes the MOD Kit installation. The next stop is the relocation of the Common Communications for Visiting Vehicle Boom, or C2B2. The crew will begin by translating to the worksite located on the P3 truss segment of the integrated truss structure, also on the port side of the vehicle. The crew will start by removing the C2B2 boom from the base, attaching an extension to the base, and installing the boom at the end of the extension. This action shifts the antenna boom by 1.5 feet, clearing the antennas from structural blockage. These steps conclude the relocation of the C2B2. Finally, Nicole translates back to the P4 location to pick up the tool bag, while Anne starts her translation back to the airlock. Shortly after, Nicole begins her translation back to the airlock as well. Both crew members will ingress the International Space Station through the airlock, completing their planned 6 hours and 30 minutes spacewalk. Okay, great. So those were all the details of the sequence of events for our EVA. Back to you, Sandra.
Thank you both for your opening remarks. We will now open it up for questions. If you're on our phone bridge, you can press *1 to submit your question. If you do feel like your question has already been answered, you can press *2 to remove your name. Once your name is called, please state your name, affiliation, and to whom you'd like to direct your question. So do we have any questions in the room?
This question could be for either one of you. What is the role that communications antenna plays? Is it just communications within the ISS, or is it transmitting data back and forth between the ISS and Earth?
That particular communications antenna is really for ship-to-ship comm. So it allows us to communicate from the ISS to the visiting vehicles that are coming up. And it allows us to do that over a range of distances. It actually leads into why we're moving it. On a previous Northrop Grumman Cygnus mission, we were actually approaching on the second antenna. You saw the 2 antennas on that boom. And we hadn't done that before. We'd always used just the other one. And we found at a spot there where we lost communication with the vehicle at about 250 meters out. So we identified that that was kind of a null area of the field. And so we determined that if we move it a little bit inboard, we will clear that blockage that was causing it to be in that area, and we would have good comm coverage. Also on that boom, it has some retroreflectors, so reflectors for the navigation systems on vehicles to look at as they're coming up to ISS. And so we have to do this move. We wanted to do this move earlier because we have 2 vehicles coming up in the fall, NG-23, their Cygnus mission, as well as the first HTV-X mission from JAXA, that both rely on those reflectors to know where they are relative to the ISS. So we have to move them over early enough so that they can adjust where they are for their navigation.
Thank you. We'll now take a question from on the phone bridge. Will Robinson Smith with Spaceflight Now.
Hi, thanks for taking the time to speak with us this afternoon. I guess just a follow-up to that question that was just asked in the explanation. Is that for all visiting vehicles that are berthed as well as that dock to the forward port of the Harmony module? I guess, put another way, like, does this impact Dragon and Starliner, or is this mostly for vehicles like Cygnus, the, HTVX and Dream Chaser? Thanks.
No, for all of the vehicles that come to the U.S. segment, we use this antenna to provide that ship-to-ship communication. So it's kind of in the name. It's our common communication system for visiting vehicles. So it's hence it got the C2V2 name. But that's all of our comm. It goes to the docking vehicles as well as the berthing vehicles.
Our next question is from Bill Harwood with CBS News.
Hey, it's Bill Harwood. I apologize if you guys already addressed this. I couldn't get the audio working for the first 5 or 10 minutes of this thing. Can I assume that both Ann McClain and Nicole did actual training for this EVA before they flew, or is it mostly virtual training? I'm just curious if you could just kind of go over how they prepared for this, either on the ground in the tank or in orbit.
Yes, so the answer to your question is absolutely. They go ahead and train for this type of EVA. So as I mentioned before, the modification kit, the mod kit itself, we have installed it on the ISS 6 times prior to this. So the understanding of where the pieces come, how do we actually assemble it, it's something that they trained on the pool. Now, for this specific one, absolutely, we go ahead and then add to that the translation to the 2 alpha locations. So the changes that go with how to get to the location, where are we going to put the bags, where do we put the hooks? So those additional changes that go with the location is what we study. And of course, we study the whole package so that we make sure that we know exactly what we're doing when.
We'll next take a question from social media. As a reminder, you can submit your questions using the hashtag AskNASA. Danny on Instagram asks, when the astronauts wake up on the day of their spacewalk, what does their morning routine look like and how do they prepare?
Okay, well, that's a great question. So I would say the day that the astronauts wake up for their EVA, they're certainly already getting prepared to come out the door. In fact, before I arrive with my team, the astronauts themselves are already on the suit doing all the checkout so that when we begin the depressurization of the airlock, we're ready to go out. The morning, honestly, if I were them, I think that it will be a very exciting day because you're already on your suit, you're ready to go, you're saying bye to your friends as you're putting all your gear, and then the shift changes on Earth, and then you're just getting ready to depress and go out the door to get the job done.
Thank you. Our next question is from Mark Carreau with Aviation Lead in Space Technology.
Yes, thank you very much, Mark Carreau, Aviation Week in Space Technology. My question has to do with the IROSAs that are coming up. I believe these will be the 7th and 8th. Are these coming as usual on SpaceX, and will they be coming on the same delivery mission? And you might tell us when that is, or will it be 2 different missions so you can wrap this upgrade up?
Sure. The IROSA arrays fly in pairs, so we have a pallet that we fly, and it would fly on a Dragon spacecraft. We have not yet determined where and when that would happen. We're still looking at it, but we had this desire to get this antenna move done, and it paired really well with this mod kit installation. So knocking this out early just means it's one less thing we have to worry about as we look forward to getting ready for those arrays eventually showing up.
We do have another question on the phone bridge. As a reminder, you can submit your question using *1. Will Robinson-Smith with Spaceflight Now.
Yes, hi. Thanks for letting me take another question here for Bill Spetch. Forward-looking question, if I might. The contract that Collins Aerospace had to develop the next spacesuit that would be used on the ISS, that was called off last year, and NASA was going to be assessing whether a new provider would need to be pulled into that contract slot. Has a determination been made on that, or is Axiom Space's EVA suit that they're working on for Artemis 3 going to be made available for ISCS use before the station is retired? Just curious about the future in that regard. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll tell you as far as that goes, we are confident in our ability to maintain the current fleet of spacesuits through the end of ISS life. But the Axiom team is working through their suit development for Artemis, and there's a lot of similarities, obviously, between the two for the needs. So if we looked at that, we could address that in the future. But right now, we don't have, from our side, we haven't addressed any plans.
And we do have another question here in the room.
To the Post newspaper again. Just following up on Mark's question, he'd asked about the IROSAs. I know in some of the material that was released, it talked about increasing the capacity. Is that just a long-needed upgrade, or are there experiments coming up that's going to require that extra capacity? Can you explain the addition of the extra capacity for the ISS?
Yeah, so the arrays that we have installed today have been legacy, and they've been up there for a really long time. And as anybody who has worked with solar panels, some people have them on their homes, they degrade over time, right? And in space, it's no different. The radiation effects degrade the arrays over time, so they produce less and less power as we go. The other thing that we watch for that these provide kind of a help for is a failure mode we found on one of our arrays here 3 or 4 years ago, where you can take it's an MMOD strike or a meteor strike on a specific portion of the array. It's a very small portion of the array that you have to hit. But within that, it causes almost a cascading effect, and it takes out multiple strings of power generation capability of that legacy solar array. And what we have the capability to do with the IROSAs is to replace those strings with these new ones that are coming up. And we actually had that happen on one of our arrays, and we utilized the IROSA then to go replace the power generation from those strings and actually cover us for a failure scenario. So it adds capability to us as the arrays age, but it also provides some protection against failure modes like that that we can get into just flying through the space environment.
Thank you. We do have another question on social media. Barrett Elementary School students ask, how can we tell the astronauts apart during their spacewalk? I know we talked about the stripes in the unmarked suit, but do you want to add any more to that?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so how can you tell which astronaut you're looking at? So red stripe will be Anne McClain, and Nicole Ayers will not have a red stripe. The other thing that maybe you can think about is once we start the spacewalk, the first astronaut going out the door will be Anne, the second astronaut going out the door will be Nicole. And as they start translating through the space station, Nicole will be the first one to get to the location where the modification kit will be. So if you're following the sequence, that's how you can tell who's who.
Thank you both very much. And I'm not seeing any other questions in our queue today, so that will go ahead and wrap up our preview briefing. We do thank you both for taking time out of your very busy schedules to join us and answer some questions. We do hope all of you tuning in will watch the Spacewalk live. Our live coverage will begin at 6:30 a.m. Eastern on May 1st, and you can watch that on NASA Plus. So thanks again for joining us, and that will wrap up today's briefing.
Good afternoon and welcome to NASA's Johnson Space Center. I'm Chelsea Bayarte here with none other than NASA astronaut Don Pettit. He just returned from space on April 19th, which was April 20th in the Kazakhstan time zone. He spent 220 days in space on this mission, but it was his 4th mission overall, bringing him to a cumulative time of 590 days in space over the course of his career. That's 3rd on the all-time list of cumulative space time by a NASA astronaut. Don, we're excited to toss it to you for some opening remarks, but first, we've got some media here in the room, we've got some on our phone bridge, and we're also taking questions using hashtag AskNASA. So if you've got a question and you want to ask our astronaut Don Pettit here, please press *1 on your phone to enter our question queue. If your question has already been asked and you want to lower your hand, please press *2 to subtract your question. And of course, send your questions on social media using hashtag AskNASA. Don, do you want to kick us off?
It's good to be back on planet Earth. As much as I love exploring space, going into the frontier, and making observations and doing the mission, you do reach a time where it's time to come home. And here I am.
All right, perfect. We're going to start off with some questions in the room here. I think we've got one from Richard here in the front. Oh.
Thank you. Richard C. with the Post newspaper. Don, I'm just curious, what are your tips and techniques for your recovering from coming back to Earth from outer space, and how's that changed over the various missions that you've done in the past? Have you sort of adapted and learned different things as those missions have accumulated? Thank you.
Okay, recovery. What do you do when you come back to Earth? And my philosophy is you go with the flow. You do what the flight docs and the physical trainers, who are all expert, you do what they want you to do. And NASA's learned over the years how to better sort of gravity rehabilitate astronauts when they come back. And everybody has a little different feeling for what it takes to come back. Some people can roll off a shuttle flight and they're ready to go out and have a pizza dance. And someone like me, coming back to Earth has always been a significant challenge. And even with a 16-day shuttle mission, that felt about like being gone for 6 months on space station. And that's just my physiology. And you go with the flow, you do what your trainers tell you to, you do what your flight docs tell you to, and you'll pop out on the other side an Earthling once again.
Another question here in the room.
Yeah, hi, Eric Berger, Ars Technica. Welcome back to Earth and humidity here in Houston. I want to ask you what it feels like today coming back from space versus 2003 when you were 48 after landing in Soyuz, and then 2012, 57, and now you're 70. It's not an ageist question. I'm just wondering, as you get older, your body changes and it becomes less resilient to demanding things. And I think coming back from space after 6 or 7 months and experiencing gravity is pretty challenging, demanding. So I'm just curious, could you contrast kind of how you feel as a 70-year-old coming back from space versus a generation ago?
Actually, I don't feel that much difference. I still feel like a little kid inside, and I probably act more like a little kid than a grown-up. And I've got a few creaks and groans in my body, but basically I feel the same as I did 20 years ago. And coming back to gravity is provocative, more so than leaving gravity. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way with everybody. That's the way it is with me. And it's a learning process to get your body back in gear for gravity. And it isn't the big muscle groups, because think about it, a week ago I was on station, I was doing really heavy squats, I was doing deadlifts, I could float around with the greatest of ease, even though I had no trapeze, and I was right at the peak of my game. And then you come back to Earth and it's like, God, I can't even get up from the floor anymore. And it's humbling for one, but it isn't about the large muscle groups. It's about the little tiny muscles that everybody forgets about because they're just there and they work. But when you're in weightlessness, these muscles don't work anymore, and they take a 6-month vacation until you come back to Earth, and now all of a sudden they start groaning and talking to you. And it takes a while to get all these little muscles tuned back up to being an Earthling. And it seems to be the same now as it was, 23 years ago on my first space flight.
We'll take a question now from the phone bridge. We'll go to the Associated Press with Marcia Dunn.
Yes, welcome back, Dawn. I'm wondering, you looked a little peaked, a little limp at touchdown when they were taking you to the medical tent. What were you feeling then? Like, did you feel as bad as you looked? I'm sorry to ask. And you said you have a few creaks and groans in your body back on Earth, but what about weightlessness alleviated any creaks and groans, or, what was special about space that made you even feel physically more fit than perhaps you do on Earth? Thanks.
And Marcia, you've always asked good questions. I think you were there when I came back from my first flight. So you understand what it means to have jumped 20 years into the future. Creaks and groans right after landing. I didn't look too good because I didn't feel too good. I was right in the middle of emptying the contents of my stomach onto the steps of Kazakhstan, and that's my new way of explaining what I was doing. And fortunately, just the way the cameras are set up there, they're polite, and they don't have a camera shoved in your face when you're in the middle of doing that. And they cut away to give you a little bit of privacy when you're not feeling too good, because after all, nobody wants to be on camera when we're doing that. But yeah, I was not a happy camper, but it was within family of what it's like for me to come back to Mother Earth.
And then I think the part 2 of her question, did you find that space flight alleviated any?
Oh yeah, space flight. I love being in space, Marcia. It makes me feel like I'm 30 years old again. And you sleep in your bed, you wake up in the morning, your shoulder, it's like that, this neck is stiffened. And all that kind of stuff heals up because you're sleeping, you're just floating. And your body, all these little aches and pains and everything heal up, and you feel like you're 30 years old again. And free of pain, free of everything, and ready to do your mission work. So I love being on orbit. It's a great place to be for me and my physiology.
Okay, we'll take another question from Andrea Leinfelder with the Houston Chronicle.
Hi, welcome back. So I saw your NASA video, and I've heard from other astronauts who've just been awestruck by your passion for science of opportunity. I'm hoping you can tell us your favorite science of opportunity experiment on the station with lots of details, please, and why you enjoy doing these in your downtime. Thank you.
Let me first jump into my downtime. I'm not a big email person. I'm not a big social media person, but don't tell that to Chelsea. And while I'm here on Earth, and I want to spend very little time doing that kind of stuff when I'm on space. I want to spend my off-duty time, and I like the concept of off-duty. It's not free time, it's off-duty. You're living on a vehicle that you could be called back to do emergency or warning kind of things at the drop of a hat. You got to keep your wits about you, so you're off-duty. But what do you do during your off-duty time? And I have a habit of doing things off-duty on station that you can't do on Earth, simply because I'm in space, and I want to do things in space that you can only do in space. And I'll worry about catching up with TV programs and things like that after I come back. So that's that aspect of why I spend time in space working on science of opportunity. Getting to one of my favorite experiments, and this was something I did like the last 2 weeks before I came back. In my personal gear, I brought a wire frame. So it looked like a big U. And then I had one side of the U that's a slider, so you could slide it. You could slide it about 1.5 feet. And I use this to make stretched, thin films, where you start off with the slider all the way at the top, and you put a known volume of soap solution there, and then you can slide the bottom down, and you can increase the cross-sectional area. And since you know the initial volume, now you know approximately what the thickness is. And so you can look at stretched thin films in environment without the effects of gravitational weight, of gravitational forces. And I looked at multiple different kinds of solutions. I looked at just pure water, and you can make stretched thin films of pure water, which you can't do down here, but you can do it there. And then 2 different kinds of surfactants. A natural surfactant based off of palm oil, Castile soap, and then our good sodium lauryl sulfate, petrochemical-based detergent. And then I had access to some high molecular weight, water-soluble polymers, oftentimes known as things like Surgi lube from our medical kit, things like that. And then you could make concoctions of all of these and look at the effect on the stretched thin film as a function of pulling down the wire and looking at the film thickness. And that was about a 2-week investigation I did in my off-duty time right before I came home. And I still have all these pictures and a lot of video, and it's something that it's going to take a long time for me to look at it and try to figure out what it all means.
I'm going to go to a question on social media. Zev on Instagram asks, what is the best part and the worst part about living on the ISS?
The best part is being in weightlessness, and you can fly around the room like Peter Pan. I mean, that is just so much fun. The worst part, and that's maybe dealing with a whole bunch of little tiny parts. You could move something the size of a refrigerator around with a couple of fingers, but if you have a whole bunch of little tiny parts, they could just float all over. And just think about, you have a flash on your camera, and you pull it off. You need to change the batteries. It holds 4 batteries. So you got 4 new batteries. You got the 4 old batteries. You got the door, and then you got your flash, and you're juggling all these things around. How do I do that? You can't just set them on the tabletop. And oh, what happens if you mix the new batteries with the old batteries? They all look alike, and a simple voltage measurement may not tell you the new battery from the old battery. So it's just, how do you juggle all these little things, which are so easy to do down here because you set your new batteries in a nice little row here, and you put your old batteries in a little row there, and then you just deal with them. And you have to have a different technique when you're on orbit, and it takes a while to learn how to do that.
We'll go back to our phone bridge with a question from Ryan Caton.
Thank you. So the ISS has grown and expanded over the last 20 years, similar to the flights that you have taken there. What was it like seeing how the station has developed over time, like comparing the station now to your first mission? And was it also kind of bittersweet, considering that it's going to be deorbited in approximately 5 years' time? Thank you.
Yeah, the first time I went to the station, it had half the crew, 1/4 the electrical power, probably 1/4 the pressurized volume, and we were still in the process of building it. So it's like living in your house when you're trying to build it, and you've got a table saw set up in the dining room and a bucket where the kitchen sink goes, but you're still trying to live there. And then, of course, you got to do a PAO event. And that's like having your boss come by for dinner when you still got the table saw set up in the dining room. And that's what station was like at the beginning. And more of a transparent thing. NASA was just learning how to run the space station. The last time they'd run a space station was Skylab. And we're just trying to learn, how do you task the astronauts? How do you keep them busy? How do you keep from overworking the astronauts? What happens when they start to run low on food? This and that. Just the operational details of space station. Now, space station is a well-oiled machine from its operation. We've got computer-based tools. We use notepad computers to look at our timelines and get our procedures. And we have near continuous comm with the ground. We could go for hours without having any comm with the ground on the first mission. And now, if you go 10 minutes without having comm with the ground, it's like, oh man, we're not going to be able to talk to you for 10 minutes. And it's a well-oiled machine. We're as efficient as we'll ever be working on space station, keeping 7 people occupied doing the mission work, and the volume expansion is right where it needs to be in terms of facilities. We've got furnaces, we've got biological facilities, we've got centrifuges, we've got all these different kinds of facilities that you could do any number of experiments, from biological-based experiments to hardcore physical science experiments, combustion experiments, crystal growth experiments. All of these facilities are there with the electrical power and the commanding and the data downlink necessary to keep these facilities going. I mean, a station is a hopping place right now. It's never a dull moment. And it's expanded into what it was really designed to be. And in terms of the end of space station, I'm a firm believer we don't need to dump space station in the ocean in 2030 if we don't want to. If we as a society decided to keep space station, we could keep it like a B-52. I mean, how many years has that thing been flying? It'll be flying close to 100 years by the time the Air Force finally retires the B-52, and it's basically the same airframe with the same aerodynamics, but everything else is new, and there's no limit to what we could do to space station except for our will to keep refurbishing it and having the funding necessary for doing it. And one example of that is with our solar panels. The current solar panels needed the space shuttle to put them on orbit, and solar panels have a finite lifetime. They're degrading, and we've got new sets of solar panels. NASA engineers working with the contractors, aerospace industry, figured out how to make new solar panels that could launch on a Dragon vehicle, much less mass, much less volume than the initial ones, and we just kind of roll them out over the existing solar panels. So you use all the guidance system, all the gimbaling, all the electrical wiring, all the stuff from the old solar panels. You just kind of roll out a new one over the old one. And what a creative piece of engineering to be able to do that. And it just shows that hey, we're running low on power. We figured out a way to get more power. We just revamped our radiators. It's a way to get rid of power on orbit, because if you can't get rid of power, you're in a vacuum, you're going to heat up, and you need to have a way to get rid of all the power that you're generating. And we just revamped our radiators during this last mission, and we can keep station going for as long as we want to keep it going. That's my opinion.
We'll take our next question from Robert Perlman with Collect Space.
Hi, Don. It's been 16 years since you introduced the world to the zero-G coffee cup. We saw you drinking from it again during this expedition. I'm just wondering if you think it's reached its final design form, or if you found there's still improvements to be made. And I noticed that you had it seemed to be two different types, porcelain and plastic or 3D printed. Does one work better than the other?
Oh, the zero-G cup. It's always going to be in the process of being reinvented. I hope so. I hope other people take it and expand it to whatever its capability could be. Just one aspect of the zero-G cup, I had some test study zero-G cups that I actually ended up using as a planter for growing peanuts in. So that's an example of extending the fluid physics of the zero-G cup into an area where now you can have a plant growing in it, and the roots can have not only access to water, but they can also have access to a region of 100% humidity, and roots do not like to be just completely submerged in water. They like to have respiration processes going on, and they need access to air. And roots that just soak in water typically aren't happy roots. And to be able to have roots that can be partly in air, partly in water, makes for a happy plant. In this case, a peanut. And using the coffee cup technology, getting to the different styles. We've got the 3D resin printed coffee cups, and then the porcelain ones I actually slip cast in my garage. I like to do ceramics, and those you have to be careful on orbit because they're flown just for demonstration, and then you have to wrap them up and put them away because they're brittle. You could break them, and you don't want sharp shards floating around. So really the porcelain ones were just for quick demonstration. The 3D printed plastic ones are what we could actually use for enjoying a cup of joe with.
Our next question comes from Marcia Smith with Space Policy Online.
Thanks so much. Don, thank you for all the wonderful images that you sent back to us. And I'm curious as to which one was your favorite. But I'm also curious as to whether or not you ever just took the time to look out the window yourself without the camera, or did you always have the camera in front of your eyes? And I was also wondering what advice you gave to the cinematographer on the FRAM-2 mission, Yannicka. She said that she'd been in touch with you to get some pointers.
Okay. Let me kind of throw something back at you. If you look at a hardcore photographer on Earth, do you ever find one without his camera? And you know, if you like to capture the moment through imagery, you always want to have a camera with you. I feel a little naked now, even though I'm fully clothed, because I don't have a camera with me. But I could look out the window and just enjoy the view. But when I'm looking out the window and just enjoying the view, it's like, oh, wow, a meteor. Oh, wow, look at that. Man, there's a flash there. What's that? And oh, look at that, a volcano going off. And it's like, okay, where's my camera? I got to record that. And part of this drive for me is when your mission is over, it's photographs and memories. It's like the Jim Croce album. And when you want to share the experience with people, you can share the memories through verbal communication like we're doing now. But the photographs are just another dimension of sharing what it's like. And I've got plenty of photographs in which to share what the experience is like. And it's an experience where most people on Earth right now can't share this experience, and I could try to give them a glimpse through my imagery.
We'll go to a question now with Ken Chang from the New York Times.
Hi, thanks. So my question is, are you going to do this again? I was wondering what your future plans are.
Okay. I'm going through gravity rehab right now, and in maybe another month I'll be ready to go back into space again. You can talk to my family about that. They may want me around a little bit longer, but I call it the explorer's paradox. When you're back in civilization, you want to be out there wherever your wilderness happens to be. And then when you're in your wilderness, it's like, wow, I need to be back with my family. And I think it's probably gone on for as long as humanity has had people that go off into the wilderness. I'm ready to go back when the flight docs say I'm ready to go back. Being at Explorer Space is what seems to be my lot in life, and I'm ready to do it. And I know John Glenn flew at age 76, something like that, and I'm only 70, so I've got a few more good years left. I could see getting another flight or two in before I'm ready to hang up my rocket nozzles.
All right, we're going to take a question that we got from social media. This one's from Louise, who asks, after taking a real didgeridoo and improvising one with the vacuum cleaner tube on your past missions, did you play any musical instruments on board regularly during this mission? And do you have any thoughts about the value of music in space?
Music is important. If you look at humanity going back through a time, there's always some kind of music, some kind of rhythm, and the same thing is in space. And if you don't have formal musical instruments with you, you'll end up improvising musical instruments. On my first flight, I flew a didgeridoo. I actually came apart in 3 sections. It was made by a colleague of mine in Australia, and it would fit in a standard mid-deck locker. It was designed for that. Since then, I found that this one wet-dry vacuum cleaner we have on orbit, if you pop the hose off and put the right attachment on the end, it makes a rather nice didgeridoo. And so the last few missions, rather than flying a didgeridoo, I just used the vacuum cleaner hose. And it's a rhythmic thing. And I like going into these conical sections of the hatch that the Russians have for their docking system, and the acoustics in there is just amazing, particularly with a rhythm instrument like a didgeridoo. And I'm not really a gifted music person. A didgeridoo is about all I can play. We have some real musicians that have flown on orbit, and we've got guitars and a keyboard, and they've individually flown their own kind of musical instruments. We've had trumpets and clarinets and bagpipes and almost everything you could think of on orbit, depending on what the crew member happens to be. And having music, particularly your off-duty time, is a good thing. It's central to what it means to be a human being.
We'll go back to some questions here in the room. Go ahead.
Richard Two of the Post newspaper again. Don, I know someone who lives nearby you, and they describe you as someone who likes to tinker, likes to work on things, and will help a neighbor fix a bum device if they have something. How has that innate sense of how things work, that curiosity of not just how things work, but helping other people, helped you in your various ISS missions?
Yeah. You need to back up and look. What do astronauts do? What is your job? And most of what we do is taking things apart and fixing it. And it involves mechanical skills, it involves electrical skills, it involves fluid skills, and these are the exact kinds of things I love to do in my spare time. And I'll tell you a story. I have a little razor. It's a little travel razor. And it's probably, a $12 item. And it stopped working. And it's like, okay, you throw it away, buy another one. That's $12. Or you could go in your garage and take it apart and see, well, how does it work? And why did it break? And I spent probably 3 hours working on this little razor. And I took it apart. Has a real inexpensive electric motor. I mean, right, it's a $12 item. And that electric motor has little tiny brushes. It was a DC motor, has a commutator with brushes, and one of the brushes had burned through. And it's like, oh, okay, what do I do now? Well, I happen to have some strips of copper beryllium alloy, and you add a little bit of beryllium to copper and it becomes a spring. And that's what they make brushes out of. And I had some, and this is from the weather stripping that you could put on your garage door. You can get it at Home Depot, this copper weather stripping. Well, that's copper beryllium alloy, and it's really thin and springy. And so I cut a little piece of that off with a pair of tin snips and bent it around and did a little soldering, and I made a new set of brushes for this thing. And it's because
We'll go to our next question in the room here.
Eric Berger with Ars Technica again. Wanted to first just thank you for the moments of inspiration. You mentioned you feel like there's a kid inside you, and I think a lot of us got into space or interested in space because we looked up and saw fascinating things when we were kids, and to sort of see the pictures and stuff you brought back from orbit, same kind of inspirational. It's just remarkable. I did want to ask you about long-duration missions because one of the important things the ISS program does is study astronaut health over long-term in space. I'm just curious, after 590 days and 4 missions, what's your own personal view of the viability of long-duration human travel to Mars or other places? Do you think that sort of with the current technology we have from an astronaut mental and physical health standpoint, we're in a good shape for that, or do you think that we've still got a lot to learn?
Yeah. Eric, you've been a long-term presence here in space, and I appreciate you being there asking good questions. Human physiology's an amazing, robust thing, and we can go places where we were not innately meant to go. We can go in the bottom of the ocean. We can go into the stratosphere. We can go into space. And we need to take machines with us that provide us things so we could be there. But human beings seem to have this amazing ability to adapt into a new environment. And I do not see any rate-limiting aspects of human physiology for going to Mars. And just think about transoceanic exploration of the 15th century. I mean, you put somebody on a ship for 90 to 100 days, and maybe they get to eat salted pork and dry tack, and then all of a sudden they get all these nasty ailments that we now know are vitamin deficiencies, and they learn about human physiology, oftentimes the hard way. And we're going about it maybe with a little more care and a little more knowledge today. But we are learning so much about human physiology when we go off into these places. And what we learn apply to our knowledge to keep people healthy on Earth. And that is part of what it means to explore. And one thing that I find fascinating about space is astronauts could go into space and we get disease-like symptoms, bone density loss, eye retinal issues, immune system depression, all of these things, disease-like symptoms in healthy people. And then we go back to Earth and they generally all go away. And so what a neat venue for learning about these kinds of things where you can, in